Hello and good evening and welcome to Full Throttle, brought to you on Unprecedented TV in association with the Alliance of British Drivers. I'm Brian Gregory, I'm the Policy Director of the ABD, and with me is my colleague Paul Naylor.
Hello, sir.
Paul is our Communications Director.
I am. So I'm the Communications Director at the Alliance of British Drivers, and today we're going to take a deep dive into what Brian puts together, which is called the News Digest. So we'll be discussing everything from the future of British steel, fuel taxation, to concerns around electric vehicle policy, road infrastructure, energy dependence, and the increasing pressure being placed on drivers and businesses alike. And we'll also be taking a look at some of the wider international developments affecting energy markets and asking what all of this means for the future direction of the UK economy and ultimately your wallets and purses. So let's buckle up. This is Full Throttle. So Brian, the News Digest, which is something that you put together, well, certainly at least fortnightly, probably.
Yeah.
I imagine it takes you a while to put together. It's an ongoing process.
Yes.
What strikes you as being some of the more important things that are going on at the moment?
The biggest thing is that the IPCC have pulled the plug on the RCP 8.5. I'm trying to think what the R stands for. The C&P, a concentration pathway. But I can't remember what the R is. Anyway, basically, this is the scenario that the IPCC had published for the trajectory of carbon dioxide emissions into the future. And it was based on some, well, business as usual, it was described at. And basically, this was a completely unrealistic scenario that suggested carbon dioxide emissions across the world were going to, carbon dioxide emissions across the world were going to go up at a rate which was completely unrealistic, even given the advances in emissions and whatnot in China and India and the rest of the world. And in fact, they have effectively admitted that this was a completely unrealistic scenario. And so the temperature projections from these projected future carbon dioxide emissions were also totally unrealistic. And so that means that the forward temperatures that their models were predicting are also completely unrealistic. So the whole edifice of the IPCC is now in ruins. But the mainstream media have hardly covered this issue because, and we've shown the picture before, but John Christie, an ex-NASA lead author, had produced a graph of all of the climate scenario models based on these carbon dioxide concentrations, the IPCC models, and projected 100 odd models, and they took the average, and the average was effectively RCP 8.5 in terms of temperature projection. But when you actually look at the realistic, the actual balloon and satellite measurements, the slope is much, much lower. And that means now that all of the IPCC models are junk, which many scientists have known for a long time. And Christie himself described the RCP 8.5 thing as, the one that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
So, but the problem is all of the major political parties across multiple countries have all signed on to a projection that was based on RCP 8.5. Well, if you basically, make sure RCP 8.5 is shuffled off its mortal coil, then all of the projections and all of the policies that were founded on those projections are completely unrealistic.
Meaningless, totally meaningless.
Yeah. So the result is, there's lots of some of the more realistic warmist people like Dr. Roger Pielke are now saying, well, we need to revisit our climate projections and we need to bring them back into kilter with reality rather than these completely idiotic climate models. And that is happening across the scientific community. But the problem is that the politicians and, of course, all the lobby groups and renewables lobbyists that are making huge amounts of money out of these these sort of unrealistic projections are all up in arms now, because the magic money tree that funds them is about to be throttled back to zero or to very low quantities, and they're not going to be happy about that.
And that's what it always comes down to. It always comes down to money, and it's always about who's got the biggest pile of money that ultimately will win. And sadly, these energy companies have probably got tables full of the stuff.
And they have a huge amount of skin in the game now, not even millions, but into billions and billions of dollars across the world. And to be effectively told, well, sorry, the cupboard's bare because we've nearly all trashed our economies going down this crazy route. So you're not going to get any more money. And of course, you stick a pig and it squeals.
Yeah, can you see Mr. Miliband changing his tact on this?
No, but hopefully he'll be sort of picked up by a couple of guys, at least a couple of guys in white coats, nice chaps in white coats, and they'll come and take him away
because the man is plugging jacket.
The man is completely deranged.
Yeah, well,
so he needs to be taken away somewhere and. How can I describe it? Intensively coached in climate science.
Re-educated.
Yeah, exactly. Even if it involves waterboarding or something, but it definitely needs some help.
These suggestions are allegedly.
No, I was joking. I was joking. I'm sure I could think of a nice, deep, warm place. Anyway, moving swiftly on.
Yeah, go.
The other thing that came across is that a Harvard study has found that wind turbines actually cause more local warming than the green energy that they produce saves.
They're wafting it. They're wafting the heat.
So yes, locally, wind farms actually increase temperatures by redistributing airflows, and so the sort of energy and temperature generation you think you're saving by not burning hydrocarbons actually doesn't exist. And of course, you've used a huge hydrocarbon footprint for all the cement and all the glass fiber, glass reinforced plastic, and all and isolating metals like neodymium and stuff like that. All use huge amounts of hydrocarbons. So of course, if anything, they make the situation worse in terms of hydrocarbon usage and hydrocarbon requirements. And this is what all of these, crazies don't seem to understand, that their renewables are actually anything but renewable, and they increase the amount of hydrocarbons that we're actually using above and beyond what they would have been if we just continued burning hydrocarbons efficiently in power stations.
So, isn't it, Brian? You can put a spin on things any way you like, but realistically, just because it's a different timing, a different part of the process, doesn't mean that it's any less an emission. And at the end of the day, this is what's happening.
Exactly, and I mean, there was a recent thing by David Terver saying that that basically what we're doing with renewables is actually increasing hydrocarbon emissions overall. So we'd be better ditching renewables and sticking with what we already had.
Yeah.
And the more renewables we put into the grid, the more conventional backup that you need, plus the more infrastructure to bring the energy generated by renewables in the Orkneys or wherever it is back to the UK through sort of 60 or 100 times the amount of copper wiring that would be needed for a conventional power station, nuclear or gas, combined gas cycle. It's just, it's madness on stilts.
It is. I mean, it immediately brings to mind, whenever you see anything criticising our beloved Prime Minister, he interprets it that, yes, I totally get it. You want us to go faster on what we're doing. No, we want you to stop what you're doing.
And go into reverse and go back the other way. We don't want you to intensify what you're already doing.
Yeah, we're not going quick enough.
the treatment you're giving us is killing the patient, so just stop the treatment.
Exactly. Yeah. But they just don't get it, do they?
No,
it's not in their interests to get it. That's the problem.
No. And just one of the things that kept Euronews, some news channel, basically says that being white and male is bad for the climate. So our jobs, diets, and hobbies produce higher carbon dioxide emissions.
Sorry.
So and probably if you're white, male, heterosexual, and Oxbridge like I am, then that must be even worse.
You've got you're all dressed in pink today. I think you're trying to slow down this a bit, I think, but
yeah, I mean, and this is all sort of eco-political nonsense. It gets weirder. Apparently, uses terms like aeromasculinity.
Yes, what? Just reading that now. This again. This is just somebody that's found something to write about and wants to sort of just.
But it all feeds into this gender stuff that's also equally balmy, because there are two genders and you are one or the other, or there are some androgynous in between. But basically, that's the only alternatives. There's not 57 million genders, and you can identify as a banana if you want, but you'll either be male or female, and that's end of.
It just depends where they put the five sticker.
Exactly, yeah.
The problem is in the modern world, the narrative is that those that previously would have been mocked and shunned have now got the they're the ones that are standing in high corner on the box. They're the ones that are being listened to, and it's wrong.
Well, I do think the tide is turning now. I mean,
I agree.
The next thing I noticed was something von der Leyen has told the EU Commission that they've got to quadruple down on the energy transition, which is wrecking all our economies because of the current oil and LNG supply shock situation, which really had the rest of the world stood, foursquare behind Trump and actually put military assets into the Hormuz area and made sure stuff got through safely. And if anything attacked it, it was basically completely obliterated by combined military force. Yeah, we wouldn't be in this mess.
I think there's certainly a case for the lack of reaction from other people gave them strength.
Well, absolutely,
yeah.
And of course, it lends fire to the argument that Trump's been making that, why are we bothering to provide all this defense support when there's a real threat, and you do all your saber rattling and all the rest of it, but basically you just sit back and do nothing because you're too frightened of upsetting portions of your electorate and putting people at risk in the Hormuz area.
I mean, a few weeks ago, prior to King Charles's visit to the States, the relationship between the UK and the USA was looking the worst I can remember it. And the thing is, our inverted commas enemies would be looking at that situation and thinking, right, now's the time to go in because America's not going to support them. And we, whether we admit it or not, we're not the superpower we once were. We certainly are not.
No.
And it would be arrogant of us to think that if any attack was made on our sovereignty, that we would be able to prop ourselves up. We need all the help we can get.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, already Argentina's starting to saber rattle again about the Falklands.
Yeah.
And as things stand, there's rock all we can do about it. We can't even manage to send one frigate into the Hormuz area because it has to come back and have a repair. And then
with the toilets. It's a problem with the toilets, wasn't it?
Yeah, it could be. Yeah, they're probably fitting transsexual toilets on the frigate,
That's probably what it was. They'd only got the two different options and they needed a third.
Yeah.
And the queue for that one was massive. It's a sad state of affairs.
It is, absolutely. Coming back to energy and politics, the next thing, apparently Bloomberg NEF which is obviously part of the Bloomberg media network, has sort of dropped a truth bomb on America in terms of the requirements of AI power, and basically gas, coal, nuclear will, because some of the data center operators are planning to build SMR, small modular reactors, to actually power their the data centers, because they don't trust even the American government to be able to provide consistent, reliable, dispatchable power. And two prime examples of that are California, which is in a similar mess to us, and New York, for the same reasons. They've gone down this, we mustn't use hydrocarbons, we must put in as much renewable capacity in the grid as we can, with the result that now even they're admitting that they're talking about actually having power cuts in the summer. Because, of course, in places like California, it's bloody hot in the summer, so there are loads of people using air conditioning units. And the whole grid, because it's using more and more renewables, as soon as it gets dark and the wind drops, you're knackered. You've got no supply from those sources. And so you have to spool up a conventional capacity. But guess what? California has even banned the use of hydrocarbons for power generation. And they have to apparently import it through some backdoor route through, I can't remember where it is, not Venezuela, but somewhere strange, to actually enable them to run these power stations that they're supposed to be phasing out. And you just think, not only have the lunatics got control of the asylum, but they're building an extension.
Have you been to California?
No, never. Right. I've only been to the US. I've only been to the US once.
Quite recently. Yeah. No, I've been to California. I went probably 7 or 8 years ago, and I'm due to go again next April as well. But I went as part of a book writing project up into the Hollywood Hills, and was in downtown LA as well. And the thing that struck me more than anything else was the smell of drugs. The smell of weed. My goodness, I think it had just been legalized there, and everywhere you went, it just smelt of weed. It's not the most picturesque of places, I'll be honest.
No. I was impressed with what I saw in Dallas and
I think Texas is a state, and
Austin as well.
I've been to Houston. I like Texas. But
I don't have any wider experience of the rest of the United States, so I can't obviously pass comment. Only that the policies that the two trailblazing, if that's the right word, it's not probably the right word, but the trailblazing renewables ones, New York and California, and you can lump the UK in with that. They are all starting to suffer the same blackout, brownout problems that have already been identified by people like Catherine Porter, David Turver, the guy at Net Zero Watch, Andrew Montford, and so on, who are basically queuing up saying, you do realize that this is not sustainable in the sensible, sustainable, won't work sense, that we're going to have to backtrack on these policies, and they've kept doubling down on them and making the situation worse.
I've got no problem with it being part of the energy mix, but it should be down to individual companies as to whether that's their choice, and then live by the sword, die by the sword kind
exactly
of mentality.
If you tie your flag to the mast of renewable, then you should be forced to use renewable energy, and the rest of us can use dispatchable, reliable, conventional
energy
while you guys sit and freeze in the winter.
That's great. Leave more of that for us.
And particularly Dale Vince.
Yes. I mean, I think we're at a tipping point in terms of the government. It would be lovely to think that we haven't got this lot until 2029, because it's not just about changing the leader, it's about changing the mindset of the party. And so, without getting overly political, some big changes need to be made, whether it's Labour that do it or whether somebody else comes in and changes things. But we cannot continue going down this route, because all we're doing is making the people of this country who are working bloody hard, making them poorer. And this is just not on.
But there's no evidence that any of the front runners to replace Starmer, if and when he goes, are anything but further to the sort of Marxo-fascist totalitarian axis than he is. If anything, he's probably more to middle ground than they are, and even he's somewhere over there. Or somewhere up there, because I think the left-right thing now is a total it's a miscategorization, because the Overton window now is between libertarian and totalitarian, and far right and far left are totalitarian. They're identical.
It's more of a cylinder now than it is a flat piece, isn't it? They basically meet. Their ideology meets.
They meet up at somewhere in the far distance where we don't really want society to be.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, by all accounts, Andy Burnham, if he gets into power, if he ends up becoming first and foremost an MP and then the PM, he is more open to dealing with the Greens and working with them. Well, that's ludicrous.
Well, yeah, I mean, the Greens, but it's clear that their mindset is very much the collective command and control, where the individual is a servant of the state instead of the other way around.
The other way around, yeah. Absolutely.
And as long as they have that mindset, we are destined for some really, really bad times. Yeah. Because we've already seen almost all of our primary industries are winding down. Miliband is now threatens to completely shut off the North Sea.
Yeah. Yeah.
They have no understanding that about 70% of our primary energy use comes from hydrocarbons.
Yeah, and if we want to lead the way, if we want to lead the world in data centers, we've got to be able to power them. You're not going to be able to power them with renewables. They take an awful lot of energy to power those.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And they don't. There's no understanding of that within the current administration. Just as there seems to be no understanding of economics, as Liam Halligan keeps pointing out. You cannot tax your way to prosperity.
No.
And the bigger the state gets and the smaller the private sector gets, the less unprofitable UK PLC becomes. The less profitable, UK PLC.
Yeah. Well, we're already driving away all the big boys, aren't we? You know, they're thinking, well, it's too expensive to do what we need to do here, whether they are a manufacturer or a service industry.
Yeah.
They look at the figures and they think, well, I could do this for half the price in another country.
Or a quarter of the price in America or wherever. Yeah, absolutely.
In some instances,
and that seems to be completely lost. On the political movers and shakers who currently occupy the top places.
But it goes back to what you just said. I mean, we should be electing a government to represent us, not the other way around. And at the moment, a vote for certain parties is like a turkey voting for Christmas, isn't it? You know, it really is.
Absolutely, and I mean, there's the old saying that if you're not a socialist at 20, you haven't got a heart. If you're not a conservative at 40, you haven't got a brain. So, the idea of giving young people who've been indoctrinated with all this green idiocy, giving them the vote in the hope of swinging, the electorate and what the electorate wants over to young people who don't have a huge life experience is a very dangerous experiment. And in fact, it may not even boomerang on them, because more and more young people are getting very disenchanted with all this eco gobbledygook that's being shoveled down their throats. And a lot of them are very, very skeptical. So, be careful what you wish for.
Absolutely. And also, I mean, we've got the looming, I don't know whether it's an eventuality yet, certainly a possibility of the voting age coming down to 16.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So kids now, 16-year-olds now, will be voting at their next election, and they've been put through the climate crisis sausage machine and are coming out the other end, indoctrinated with rubbish.
Yeah.
There's no other way to describe it.
They've got heavily edited versions of history that are being taught to them.
Well, yeah, there's that as well, of course.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, one of the other, there's a sort of, apparently one of the Gulf states is looking at sort of their idea of the future, and their idea of the future seems to be a bit like an upgraded version of the city that appeared in Blade Runner. Dystopian, because they're talking about having literally a huge 15-minute city where nobody needs a private car, everybody uses public transport, everything is within reach in 15 minutes, and you can walk or cycle or e-scooter at huge speed, knocking everybody down on the way. And it's really frightening. It's on Elizabeth Nixon's Substack.
Right.
And it's,
yes, I've got it here now. Yes.
Even the gleaming city of the future will rise on Gaza's blasted heath, the fever dream of our AI overlords. It's really scary, and it reads like the sort of stuff I used to read as science fiction when I was, of university age.
Is it your Isaac Asimov sort of stuff, or?
Well, yeah, more Philip K. Dick, really. Blade Runner was based on "Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep?"
That's right. Right.
And that it very much reads like the sort of stuff that you would have you saw in Philip K. Dick's novels. It is genuinely scary, and people don't seem to realise that all the infrastructure appears to be being put in place to enable this kind of madness. As we sit and watch, and we don't seem at the moment to have any way of stopping it. But ultimately, I think that will change.
Yeah, it does feel that, all these dystopian sci-fi dramas such as Blade Runner and that sort of ilk, at one time you thought, what a gritty view of the future. It feels like we're very, very rapidly falling that way. There was
my wife's not a great follower of science fiction, but she started watching this series called Black Mirror.
Yes.
And she watched some of the episodes, and she said, "This is really scary." And it was I didn't follow all of it. One of it was about a woman who was dying with a brain tumor, and they found a way to sort of create an artificial brain and feed her memories into that, so she could be kept alive. But the cost for doing that just kept rising and rising and rising. Until at the end, her husband and her decided to just let her be switched off.
That's it, yeah.
And the sort of stuff that's going on now really makes you worry about the future if it's in the hands of the current custodians, because that's the kind of future that you think could emerge if they're not corralled and controlled in some way.
Yeah, there was a really great drama, actually made by the BBC. Quite a rare thing. It was a great drama called Years and Years, and it came out not so long ago. And it basically each episode sort of leapt a year or so, and it's got so many parallels with what's going on now. Yeah, really has. If you get a chance to dig that out and find it, I'm sure Charlotte's probably seen it, our producer. Years and Years, really good show. Just and
chiming into what you've just been talking about, apparently the EU is now pushing driver monitoring cameras in future cars, so that if it thinks you look tired or distraught or, God forbid, under the influence of alcohol or drugs, and it spots that your pupils are dilated, you may not be able to turn the vehicle on and use it.
That's right. So we've actually got we've got a great video clip thing I'm going to be sharing through social media that was sent to us by Duncan. He works with us at
Duncan White.
Drivers. Duncan White. Yeah. I found a great video clip, and like you just said, just because you've got into a car all stressed out and eyes wide doesn't mean that you're coked off your head. In the example that's given in this video, somebody could have been chased by a wild bear and is trying to get their car to start and get away from there. And the AI isn't letting them go. Or it may even not let you go because you've exceeded your carbon dioxide emissions for the month, and your bank's accounts have been frozen, and the government doesn't believe you have the right to move anywhere because you might put some of the gas of life into the atmosphere. Well, you might have said some hurty words on Facebook to somebody.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
But one thing, it's supposed to be there for improved road safety, but that's the very last thing that will actually provide. It's just more command and control thinking being put into practice.
It is more Big Brother. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And not in the sense of the
certainly not in a benevolent
McCall
sense. No,
no.
Very much in the sense that it was meant in Orwell's novel.
Exactly. Yeah. So what else have we got?
One of the other interesting things that's come out of this the Gulf situation is apparently Taiwan produces over 90% of the world's most advanced computer chips, and more than 90% of the servers that will power the AI revolution. So if the sort of things have been going on in the Gulf, if that emboldens China to actually get involved in repossessing Taiwan or whatever, then the AI revolution will be stuffed anyway.
Yeah.
Because there won't be the hardware to actually enable it.
It's
whether
very
that's good or bad, I don't know.
Yeah. It's very ill-advised to let one part of the world have 90% of the say-so in anything.
Yeah.
Certainly in that.
Yeah.
That's rather worrying.
It is. It is absolutely. What else have we got? The other thing I picked up was that somebody noted that the reason why it's so difficult to buy a new petrol car in this country, kitted as it may be with all the rubbish that we've just described, whether you would want to buy one anyway. But the point is that British car manufacturers apparently have very, very substantial stocks of petrol vehicles and diesel vehicles. Well, probably smaller stocks because people have been frightened away from diesel.
Yeah.
But there's no shortage of conventional vehicles. It's just they have to dribble them in at the rate that enables them to keep the percentage of 33 in every 100 vehicles sold at the moment being battery electric vehicles, or loosely categorized. I think hybrids also fit into that category, although that may not be for much longer. As apparently BMW have now suggested that if you drive a hybrid vehicle and you don't bother charging it, in other words, it's just a petrol vehicle that you with a dirty big battery that you lump around inside it, they're talking about putting sanctions on those drivers by hobbling the performance of the vehicle if you don't use the electric component.
How would they know?
Because since the start of this year, all European and indeed the US car manufacturers are getting all the telemetry from modern vehicles, from anything from 2019 onwards, I think it is. And they are collecting those data and selling them to interested third parties, whether or not you gave permission, which is why I'm going to be taking my 2019 BMW to a specialist I know and asking him to pull the fuse on the telemetry control unit, because that's the only way to stop the flow of data, which will go to BMW, and BMW sell it to your insurance company, to whoever knows. And frankly, that's my business. I bought the car for it's my choice how I use it, and it's nobody else's business, to be monitoring what I'm doing.
I mean, it all comes down to control.
Yeah, absolutely. Very much so.
Yeah, this whole 15-minute city idea that we've talked about, dystopian future. Yeah, it's going to stop. There's going to be, it feels like the tide is starting to turn, but it's going to have to turn rapidly.
But of course, the problem is that the global government institutions are like super tankers. It takes a long time to turn. Once they turn, then of course it's very difficult to change the trajectory. But I think at the moment we're seeing the gradual course change and political correction, which of course the hard left, Marxo-fascists, whatever you want to call them, are trying to prevent happening. But there will be a reckoning for these people, and it will be not pleasant for them, I hope.
Where can you trace the modern thought process that's led us to this point? Where can you trace that back to?
I think the problem is that the health service has been progressively hijacked, and of course the stuff that Blair put in, where basically the health service is in effect in hock to other financial institutions from PFI or something. I can't remember what it was called, but basically they took out huge loans at the time at what seemed like reasonable interest rates, and built infrastructure. And then, of course, the interest rates have got higher and higher, and these assets are depreciating. So the actual value of the asset has sunk below what was borrowed to finance them. And then, of course, you're in an endless chase then to try and get more and more efficiency out of a declining asset. And then, of course, the state feels always that it has to, well, since, I don't know. I mean,
pandemic.
No, I think it started before the pandemic, but that probably accelerated it. The view is but it's this command and control thing, that the state needs to have more and more control over individuals and institutions to provide the safety net that we need. But actually, what we need is for them to provide the information and the support for us to make our own rational, logical decisions, not topmost command and control. But it's been getting worse and worse. And of course, the bigger the health service gets and the bigger the state gets, the smaller is the room for the private sector, which generates the wealth. And then we get into the situation where the idea seems to be that we can tax ourselves into profitability and into growth. And we've already seen, even in the short time, I mean, the Tories did a bad enough job of destroying the economy, but Labour have gone about it with knobs on, and the result is that we've gone from, was it 2% growth or something we had under the Tories, and we're now getting sort of 0.1%, and that's seen as, that's growth.
That's a victory.
But I'm sorry, I thought if growth was below about 1% for more than 2 quarters, that's technically a recession. But we've been in recession now for, well, since Labour got in. But
I think, and another big problem, of course, is that the people that are getting taxed over and over again are the
wealth creators.
But they are increasingly dwindling in terms of their numbers, because there's a lot of people out there. As an example, a friend of mine, she's a teacher. Her brother and sister-in-law, they don't work, and they're better off by about £900 a month than she is. Absolutely crazy. How does that encourage anybody to work?
It doesn't. No,
the people that are working are doing it for one word, and that's dignity.
Well, and that's the problem. You know, we're not teaching the sort of things of self-reliance, dignity, independence, all of the things that I was brought up with. You know, it's just people are being demoralized by a political system that worships mediocrity, or indeed less than mediocrity. Whereas I was brought to, believe in, and I don't have any qualms, in an elitist system where the cleverest and most able people got into the top jobs. But now,
absolutely makes sense.
Exactly. But we're being dumbed down, or the system is dumbing people down, and mediocrity. Everybody gets a prize. Even the class dunce.
It used to annoy me when I used to go to my kids' school sports days. Everybody won. Everybody got a medal. Really?
Yeah.
But how's that going to help them when they're older? How does that teach competition? How does that teach how to deal with losing? Because you've got to be able to deal with it.
But of course, the state will just, the state will support me, whatever. Well, no. And that's where, the big divergence between the US, which is 4% growth or something at the minute. And that's even taking into account New York and California, which are probably going, while all the other states that don't follow their policies are doing that. And we are, well, what's the latest? 0.1%, 0.2% or something?
It was something ridiculous, wasn't it? But
Yeah,
but even that was welcomed.
yeah. Have another potion, cyanide potion, Right. Yes. Going back to sort of scientific things, there's one he's described as a godfather of AI, a guy called Jeffrey Hinton. He has said, "I'm worried the overall consequence is AIs that systems more intelligent than us eventually take control." As these guys never watched Terminator 2.
Or iRobot.
Well, yeah, exactly. Where have they been for the last 60 years?
They don't have time to watch telly. They're too busy.
Clearly not. Or watch anything with, predictive, future predictive capabilities, if you like.
Predictive programming, as our producers put into the chat. Yeah.
Yes. What else? There's a basket of things. Apparently, electric car depreciation is horrendous. The worst cars of 2024 were revealed on Car Wow. So if you go on the Car Wow site and look for worst cars of electric cars of 2024, it'll tell you which depreciate the most. But they all depreciate precipitously. And of course, the problem is that destroys the new cars of depreciation. That destroys the used car market, because that pushes the prices of used cars down also. Yeah. And anybody who's taken out a lease on one of these vehicles based on a predicted future value, under which the actual value of the vehicle at 3 years is going to submarine massively, they're going to be left with a big problem, or at least the leasing companies are going to be left with a big problem.
I can't imagine anybody actually owns an EV. It'll always be through leasing and that form of financing your vehicle. And to that end, basically, if all you do is lease something, it's a disposable commodity. It's not something that you're invested in.
Yeah, apparently this is what's happening in China. There's 120 odd car manufacturers in China, and they're all pumping out these huge numbers of electric vehicles. And apparently the attitude of the Chinese public now is that they're like mobile phones.
Yeah.
So after 3 years, you get rid of it, and there's no used market for BEVs in China.
Exactly.
So they have to be scrapped.
Yeah.
And it's like an iPhone on wheels.
Yeah. My father-in-law went to a breaker's yard a few months back now with his partner to look for something for her car. And while they were in the office buying the part, I forget what it was, outside on the breaker's yard, there was a crescent of about 7 or 8 relatively new-looking EVs.
Yeah.
And so George says, well, they look all right. He says, no, they're all write-offs because the batteries in them were no longer working properly. Yeah. They've got damaged or whatever. And the cost of replacing the batteries in these cars made it an insurance write-off. Yeah. And that's what's going to happen. These cars are disposable. When you come to change your phone, more often than not, it's because the battery's no longer charging.
Yeah.
And it's going to be the same.
And in many cases now, it's not like the old phones where you could just buy a new battery.
Yeah. It's a sealed unit,
integral part of the phone, and once the battery's knackered, the phone's knackered.
That's right. Yeah, you can't get it. You can't open it up. You can't blow on the connectors and get it back in there. No. Once it's gone, it's gone.
I'm thinking of going back to my old Nokia 6310 I've got in the bowels of the cupboard behind me.
I can see you now.
Smart, but it will still do voicemails and texts, and that's all you really need them for.
I can see you now driving around in that brown Allegro you're going to be going down to.
No. I never got away with the Cortex steering wheel.
The square steering wheel.
No, but many people are now looking at going back to a vehicle that was produced, around 2010. Before, I mean, the other thing is the touch screens now, and apparently, eventually, all these touch screens delaminate. Right. And apart from looking awful, they stop working, and the cost of replacing the touchscreen is huge. Yeah. And it's big. This big thing in front of you. Some of them are enormous now. It's like a great big television stuck in the middle of your dashboard.
I mean, for my car, I've just got a little Seat Ibiza, and the screen in mine, it's huge. It is.
Yeah.
It's great because I mean, it's in your face, but I can imagine if it breaks, it's half the car.
Yeah, and it's very distracting as well. I don't like, and I don't like the fact that in many cases in vehicles, I'm sure manufacturers are starting to pull back from this now. You've got to start fiddling about with the touchscreen to get stuff like what driving mode you're in, you know, answering phone calls, all sorts of stuff. And you're not looking at the road when you're doing that. Whereas with older vehicles, you had a knob and you can just twist the knob. You didn't need to look. You knew where it was by touch.
They've actually reintroduced a lot of the knobs and switches because of exactly that, Brian. You are finding that essential twiddly bits are becoming twiddly bits again rather than just a flick of the screen. Interestingly, as well, Sid Taylor, who is an excellent writer, who provides the car reviews that go in our Driving Sense Extra issues, and we'll be working on Driving Sense Extra that'll be released end of May, early June. He has sent me, I asked him for a review, and he said, I'll send you something that's a bit off the wall. He says, see what you think. And it's for a vehicle called the Geely EX5 Max. And it's exactly what we've just been talking about. It's a Chinese electric vehicle. And I thought, let's have a look at this, because this will be something that will either be of interest one way or the other. It's more likely to make people's blood boil than anything else, but it'll be interesting to see what he has to say. That's just something that people will be able to read in the coming weeks.
Weren't Geely and Renault supposed to be linked with some engine development in South Wales, but I'm not sure if it ever went ahead?
Possibly, yeah. I mean, Geely is a name that I have heard of. I mean, some of the names that you see on adverts now, goodness knows where they've come from. But this is very much a Chinese vehicle, and just looking very quickly at what he's put here, I don't think he's totally enamored with it.
No. Well, I can't understand. All these modern cars to me look like the sort of worst nightmare dreams of a Tonka. You know, remember Tonka toys? They
look like they've been drawn by a child.
They all look exactly the same. Yards and yards of black plastic LEDs and all sorts of stuff. And there's no character. They all look like they came out the same jelly mold. And it wasn't properly lubricated or something. I don't know what it was. But they didn't come out, looking like a proper vehicle.
It's either that, or they look like that classic episode of The Simpsons where Homer starts working with his brother, who's a car designer, and he just goes, you go and design something. And he comes out with something that, well, a 4-year-old would have drawn.
Or something that Father Ted and the other guy, they remember.
I'd just tap it with a spoon.
The car that's the lottery prize gets a bit of a ding, and they go with the hammer to correct it.
It was one of my favourite episodes. I mean, it was a quality series anyway. That was
really funny stuff. Anyway, coming back to sort of science and whatnot again, apparently most of the oil companies are now pulling back from wasteful green spending, having been freed from this ESG mania and strictures and the climate alarm dogma. So now green projects are having to compete on an equal footing with oil and gas projects in terms of net present value, stuff like that. And when you start doing those sort of calculations, green projects just basically unprofitable. Without subsidies, none of them can survive. And it amazes me that we in the UK, we started with this renewables drive well over 30 years ago. If they had any merit, they wouldn't need subsidies now. And the subsidies under Miliband are actually increasing, not decreasing. So that's clear that they're a money pit, and they're just draining resources from this country and from people's pockets to line the pockets of people like Dale Vince.
Yeah, I mean, we've already got probably the biggest money pit in HS2. We don't need this as well.
I mean, it's also clear. I mean, one of the other things that there's a Canadian EV factory, an 11 billion EV factory that was supposed to be going to be built by Honda in Canada, and they pulled the plug on it because they realized that EVs are struggling, and if they're not a dead duck, then they're close to expiring duck.
I imagine these manufacturers, they're all sat there sort of watching each other, watching who's going to make the next move. But there is a strong sort of change of direction where they're looking at sort of not scrapping their...
Stellantis have already said they're going to start bringing back petrol and diesel vehicles.
They
should have made this stand 2.5 decades ago and said to government, stick this idea, it's not going to work. We're going back to technology that failed 100 years ago. There's no reason to believe it'll work this time.
Yeah. I mean, the only benefit that we'll have is we can deliver our own milk.
Yeah. Yes. Exactly. Yeah.
That's the only thing that worked in milk.
I think the automotive industry was seduced by the thought that the average life of a battery electric vehicle is about half that of a petrol or diesel vehicle, if not less. Yeah. And they thought, well, we'll be able to sell 3 or 4 cars for every conventional vehicle we currently sell. Yeah. And then, of course, those projections have withered on the vine, because basically the vast majority of buyers are not buying BEVs and not even buying the latest technology conventional cars because of all the crap that they're loaded down with.
Yeah. It's a bit like, was it during the pandemic that used cars, their prices soared, didn't they? Yeah. Because of, there was no availability elsewhere. Yeah.
Yeah, and they weren't being produced because most of the components couldn't be shipped around the world. So that's right. Yeah, there was a huge backlog.
Yeah, that's right. It wasn't quite during the pandemic. It was afterwards, wasn't it, with all the component shortages? We've become very much a consumer-driven society where people change their cars more often than they need to. And
in fact, we're scrapping perfectly good, serviceable internal combustion engine vehicles to sort of sacrificed on the altar of green zealotry. Yeah, it's just bonkers. Yeah, and I think what's happening now is that the residual values of these BEVs, as we've discussed, are so bad, whereas the residual values of internal combustion engine petrol and diesel vehicles, their used prices are actually trending upwards. And BEV values are cratering. Yeah. So in many ways, the automotive industry has been the architect of its own demise by allowing government to force stupid policies on them that should never ever have been enacted.
Yeah, I think probably as what tends to happen with this is one of the manufacturers would have seen some pound signs or dollar signs because of it, and then they've all followed suit. But they should have had a,
well, of course, Tesla were held up as the poster boy, and they were doing very well at the time. I mean, they've got their own problems now because Musk turned out not to be the green idol, but he's actually got a head on his shoulders and realizes that there's a limit to what green technology can do. And he's paid the price politically because his erstwhile allies have been stabbing in the back, left, right, centre, midriff, wherever. et tu brute with knobs on.
I was just going to say exactly that. Oh, dear.
And speaking of mad environmental zealots, our friend Miliband has apparently been working with senior judges to back secret court hearings to allow energy companies to get warrants to force entry into people's homes and install prepayment meters. How long before he does that with smart meters as well? Sorry, the gas engineers arrived. Can we just pause it?
Okay. Bit of a hard edit there, Charlotte. Hard edit. We're nearly done.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah,
no problem. Right. Okay. So the gas engineers arrived to service our gas boiler and gas fire.
Charlotte will edit this, and then we'll just have like a closing comment. I suppose.
But that development with Miliband is quite worrying because it's quite clear that they will extend it so that if people who refuse to have a smart light meter like me, they'll force entry and force you to have a smart meter against your will.
Yeah. I mean, that's been threatened for some time now, hasn't it? But it looks like it's gathering some steam, which is what it actually needs. Is some steam.
Absolutely. It needs a gas boiler, a gas fire, and steam. James Watt, come back, all is forgiven.
Brian, that's been brilliant. So thanks for sharing that with us. That's fantastic stuff.
Okay, well, I presume Charlotte will top and tail it and get it out fairly soon.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. We better say goodbye.
Yeah. It's about normal sort of timing as well. So 55. Yeah.
We've done
okay.
all right,
have a good weekend.
Yeah, goodbye, everybody. It's goodbye from me.
Yeah, you've all done very well.
Bye-bye.